2 o'clock. So, in the last live, I talked to you about creative communication through writing. So, I am going to a subtopic called story writing. Okay, so today's our topic is crafting compelling stories. So, how do the writers craft some masterpieces? For example, our ancestors, our folk tales, our fairy tales. Good afternoon, Johnny. So, how do they craft or how do they make all those amazing, mesmerizing stories? We are going to have a outline of how they do it. So, stories have the power to captivate, inspire, and resonate. Today, we will explore the essential elements that make a story memorable. What are the essential elements of a story or anything? A novel or a whatever it is. So, we are going to talk about the elements, the essential components of a story that will make it attractive, compelling, and transcending through time. Okay, so our first elements, the elements of a good story or the building blocks of a story. We know that every great story is built on key elements, or it will have building blocks or like bricks that we use to build our buildings. Characters that breathe life. The main important element of a story is the characters that breathe life. All can create a character, but it will take a master craftsman to make a character that will breathe life. For example, James Bond. It is actually a character crafted by a master artist. We all think it is a real person, but it is actually a simple character that was born through the words. So that is the main element of a story, characters that breathe life. And a vivid setting. We know every story needs to have a background or backstory, a setting. For example, these James Bond stories, it is almost always a crime thriller. It is a like CBI stories. നമ്മുടെ CBI സേതുരാമയ്യർ പോലെ ആണ് ജെയിംസ് ബോണ്ട് സ്റ്റോറീസ് വരിക. സോ അതിൻ്റെ സെറ്റിംഗ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഒരു ക്രൈം അന്വേഷണ ഇതിലേക്ക് പോകുന്ന കുറ്റാന്വേഷണ സംഘങ്ങൾ അതിൻ്റെ എത്ര കണ്ടുപിടിച്ചിട്ടും പിടികിട്ടാപ്പുള്ളികളായിട്ട് നടക്കുന്ന കുറച്ച് പേരെ കണ്ടുപിടിക്കുന്ന ഒരു ഹീറോ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ക്യാരക്ടറാണ് നമ്മുടെ ജെയിംസ് ബോണ്ട്. ആൻഡ് എൻഗേജിങ് പ്ലോട്ട്. ഓരോ ജെയിംസ് ബോണ്ട് സ്റ്റോറിക്കും വ്യത്യസ്തമായിട്ടുള്ള കഥകളായിരിക്കും. സോ ഹായ് നിമി, ഗുഡ് ആഫ്റ്റർനൂൺ. So if we are looking through some Agatha Christie's novels, we can see that she is writing crime novels, murder mystery. She is actually writing thrillers that some have murders as a backstory, some have some kidnapping, serial killers, a psychotic killer. Okay, so it always have a vivid setting that is always interesting to the reader. Then another example is our Panchatantra, our ancient story. This Panchatantra is about morality, is about lessons. I hope you all know about the backstory of Panchatantra. This was a hi Brycey, good afternoon. So there it was for, I don't remember the number, there was some princess in a kingdom who was really naughty. They didn't obey anyone. So the king was really upset about that. They need to have proper education for him to announce them as successors. Sorry. So in order to do that, he called for a saint. He called for a sage who was well known, who was well versed in every knowledge, every wisdom, and asked him to teach the princess. So it was actually a impossible task that he gave to the sage. So the thing was, the sage made all these lessons into stories, different stories, and he made the princess listen to him talking about it. Thus, through those stories, the princess imparted wisdom from their teacher, the sage. Thus, it is said that they became the wisest rulers of their era. That is the importance of a good story. A good character, a vivid setting, a wisdom or some knowledge that we get through the story. Then another thing is an engaging plot. We have to engage the readers into our plot, whatever it is. If it is a romantic comedy, if it is a murder mystery, if it is a crime thriller, or maybe it can also be about subconscious mind, about psychological things. Okay, but it have to be engaging. The reader needs to have interest in this story. Then it is a central conflict. We know, as we already said, there is characters. നമുക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും ഒരു പ്രൊട്ടഗണിസ്റ്റും ഒരു ആൻറ്റഗണിസ്റ്റും വേണ്ടിയായിരിക്കും. Some story only have antagonist, some story have protagonist. So the thing is, ഈ പ്രൊട്ടഗണിസ്റ്റും ആൻറ്റഗണിസ്റ്റും നായകനും പ്രതിനായകനും ഉണ്ട്. പക്ഷേ ഇവർക്ക് തമ്മിൽ അടി കൂടാൻ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇവർക്ക് തമ്മിലൊരു ഏറ്റുമുട്ടൽ ഉണ്ടാകാനുള്ളൊരു സാഹചര്യമില്ല. നത്തിങ്. ദേ ആർ ഗോയിങ് ഓൺ ദെയർ ഓൺ ലൈഫ്, ദേ ആർ ഗോയിങ് വിത്ത് ദെയർ ഓൺ ലൈഫ്. So there is nothing that is triggering a serious action in the story. For example, നമ്മളുടെ ഷേക്സ്പിയറിനെ തന്നെ എടുക്കാം. ഷേക്സ്പിയറിൻ്റെ ഒരു പ്ലേ മെർച്ചൻ്റ് ഓഫ് വെനീസ്. മെർച്ചൻ്റ് ഓഫ് വെനീസിലെ നായകൻ ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് ഐ തിങ്ക് ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് ബസാനിയോ ആൻറ്റോണിയോ ആൻഡ് ദ ആൻറ്റഗണിസ്റ്റ് ഈസ് ഷൈലക്. ഷൈലക് മമ്മൂട്ടിയുടെ ഷൈലക് അല്ല, ഷൈലക് ഈസ് എ മണി ലെൻഡർ ഇൻ ദാറ്റ് ജൂവിഷ് മണി ലെൻഡർ. സോ the plot is that Bassanio wants to marry Portia, a rich heiress. So he is borrowing money from Shylock. Shylock makes an impossible contract with Antonio, who is Bassanio's friend. And this Antonio and Bassanio fell into the Shylock's trap and they can't escape from it. Shylock wants Antonio to be killed in the lieu of their payment. So Portia comes as a advocate and frees Antonio and Bassanio. This is the outline of the story. So thus, in this, the central conflict or the serious action is that Bassanio and Portia's marriage and the Shylock lending money to Bassanio. So without this central conflict, there is no story. That is the importance of a central conflict relating the antagonist and the protagonist. Then a satisfying resolution. We all know, if we take the side of a villain, some people won't like it. For example, if the villain is winning all the time, people will say it is not moral, it is inhuman for the villain to win all the time, because sometimes our children are reading this story, so they will think, oh my god, the villain is winning all the time, so I have to be a villain. So that is what, if the hero is winning through his good deeds, then the children or whoever is reading will side with the hero. But there are some time when we have to take the villain side, especially when the villain is not born, but when he is made. Okay, so we said about the building blocks, which is the characters, the setting, plot, and the central action or central conflict, and a satisfying resolution. We can also say this satisfying resolution as the climax. So most of our fairy tales starts with once upon a time there lived a girl and she has some problems in her life, and at the end a prince comes to save her. She is saved and she marries the prince, and then they live happily ever after. That is most of our stories. So the characters are the girl and the prince. Then the vivid setting, the girl's background, how she is going through the problems. Okay, and an engaging plot. In this story, the plot is that the prince and the girl have to meet each other. They have to fall in love. There should be a romance. Then the central conflict, it might be by the girl's parents, step parents, or the villain, etc. And the satisfying resolution is that the heroine and the hero lived happily ever after defeating the villain. So these are the elements of a good story. Without these, it might not be a story. Okay, so we talked about the elements of the good story. Let's go into breathing life into the characters. We already know that there should be a character, and how to breathe life into these characters. Just placing a character or a protagonist or an antagonist like that won't be enough. You see, if we are writing a story, the characters are the heart of our story. They are the main images that the readers are reading. So we have to develop their personalities, their backstories, and explore their motives. What is the motive of the villain? What is the motive of the hero? What are their purposes? Okay, and allow for character arcs. What is meant by character arcs? It means that when we develop a character, for example, a villain's character, we can either make him into a complete villain by saying that he was born a villain, he was mischievous from his childhood onwards, and he was terrific, he was always bad. And when the villain character reaches its peak, that is where the villain and the hero collides with each other. Then the villain comes into a realization about good and bad, and then he goes back to being good. Okay, so there is a developing personality, then reaches its peak, then it goes down to maybe to an opposite side, maybe he dies. Okay, anything that is. Then, hello Shija, good afternoon. Readers connect when characters feel real and undergo growth. So if there is a girl, we already said there is a central character, the girl, and if we are only introducing the girl as a protagonist, okay, just say she is the heroine of the story. അപ്പോൾ അവിടെ ഒരു ഗേൾ ഉണ്ട്, ആ ഗേളിനെ നമ്മൾ പ്രിൻസുമായിട്ട് ഒരിക്കൽ കണ്ടുമുട്ടുന്നു, ദേ ആർ falling in love, they married and they live happily ever after. It is not a story because we don't know what the girl is, what she likes, what she is like. Okay, so what will we do? The authors should provide a backstory of the girl. Maybe she lost her parents in an accident and she became an orphan. Okay, so then the character readers will feel an empathy to this character, and they will feel, oh yeah, she is an orphan, we should feel sympathetic to her, and then they will come along with the journey of that character. They will feel when she is feeling sad, they will be happy when she is happy. Okay, that is the importance of breathing life into a character. And also remember that we have to be accurate in all the details. Even if we miss a single small detail, it's all right, but try not to miss the major details of the character. Okay, then the next is plotting the journey. We said there should be a plot. A well-structured plot follows the 3-act journey. Setup, where the stage is set, and the confrontation, where conflicts arise, and resolution, where the story finds its conclusion. So, a well-structured plot. We have the characters there, and we have the outline of a story. But to have a well-structured story, we need to have 3 things. That is the setup. Setup means where the story is set. We said the girl had no parents. She met a prince. She fell in love. So we have princes even in this modern day. Maybe even in the future we will have princes, royalties, etc. But to have we need to have a setting, the background of the story. So we can say like this is happening in the 15th century or the 16th century, or we can say this is going to happen in the far future. Okay, so that is the setup or the background, and we can provide a kingdom with a name and its people, something magical about the kingdom. Maybe fairies, unicorns and monsters are there in the story. Then that is the setup or the stage setting of this story, where the story is taking place. It can be an imaginary place, it can also be a real place. Then is the, after setting all this background, backstory, all the things we need, we have to go for developing the story. Slowly develop the story according to your own pace, and by step by step we have to come to peak at where the confrontation is, when the hero and the heroine meets, or maybe when the hero and the villain confronts each other, when they break into a fight. That is the confrontation. Okay, that is where a serious action is committed. We can say that is the peak of the confrontation of the story. Then after this confrontation, we have to have a satisfying resolution. Sometimes we tend to stand with the villain if the villain is logical and she or he needs justice, we will stand with the villain. But normally most of the time we are seeing that hero gets all the time, hero gets all the praise. Okay, so that is what called a serious or satisfying resolution, a solution for all the confrontation and the problems. So we can think of it as a roadmap for your readers. So it is we said about the setup, about the stage settings where the story is going to happen, and slowly we have to build up the story. Then we will reach the confrontation between hero and the heroine, or the hero and the villain. Okay, and later after the confrontation we will reach its conclusion or climax. Climax is when the story reaches its peak, and then from then onwards it will travel in a downward direction. Maybe some stories end with the climax. Like they will say, the prince and the princess married each other, they lived happily ever after. That is their climax. But for some, we will say the prince and princess married each other, they had 2 children. The 2 children then grew to become heroes of their nation. They both married the princesses of their neighboring nations. They were one big family. Okay, now we are providing a little bit more information about their afterlife, after the climax. Okay, so we can do whatever we want with that. So it is a roadmap, or it is the map of how we should structure our story. Next is crafting unforgettable stories, effective storytelling. We have the plot, we have the characters, we have the setting, we have the confrontation or the serious action, and we have the conclusion. But how to make it effective? If we have to raise our standard of storytelling, we have to show the readers. We know that we cannot put pictures into a novel or pictures into a story unless it is a children's fable. So what we have to show is how with words we have to paint pictures. We know a photograph is worth enough 1,000 words, but we have to make it worthwhile without pictures. We have to paint a picture with our words. If we are describing a forest, a magical forest, we can say it was an enchanted forest filled with fairies, had fairy dust everywhere, and the trees and the animals could talk, and our princes were asleep there. Okay, so by saying this, we are providing a vision to our readers. We are letting them imagine in their own terms, but by providing the keywords. Okay. Use vivid descriptions to paint images, build tension to keep readers engaged. So we already made painting pictures with our words. Next is to build up the tension. We have to build up some tension before the confrontation of the hero on the heroine, or maybe the hero and the villain. Like we can say the villain kidnapped the princess. Okay, the villain is kidnapping the heroine, and he took her prisoner away from the hero's grasp, and the hero is going to save the princess. So the reader is getting engaged with the story. He is curious about what is going to happen next. He will say, what to say? Will the hero be able to save the princess? Will he be defeated in that journey? What will the villain do? Will the princess die? Okay, so that there is a tension, there is a curiosity. So we have to create such curiosities or such tensions, suspense thrillers. Okay, that is mostly used for suspense thrillers or crime mysteries that want to keep people in a cliffhanger. Okay, so next is deliver a conclusion that resonates. What do you mean by resonate? If you are a physics graduate or you have studied physics, we will know what resonance is. Resonance is when you touch, or when you when you are, like for example a guitar string. Okay, when a guitar string is plucked, we can say that it produces a sound. That sound actually resonates with the same objects that have the similar wavelength. So it is said that when we are throwing a stone into a pond that is really calm, it will create some waves, small waves that will go round and round and round, and it will cover the whole lake. Okay, so that is what resonance means. So, for example, in Cinderella's story, we know that their stepsisters and stepmother tortured her a lot. She went through a lot of hardship, and but at last she got her happy ending. So this happy ending or this conclusion was resonated through the time. Many countries, many cultures, many histories provide similar stories with a similar conclusion. Okay, so a story that resonates through the time is the best one ever. There are a lot of stories just like that. For example, even now we have some stories like The Color Purple, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Okay, so these are the books that are really interesting to read, and also it keeps us engaged with the story. It gives us a conclusion that is almost really good. Also, there are books that keeps us in a cliffhanger just so that they can get a part 2 or the second part of this book. So, even then, that is a productive conclusion because it is keeping the readers on a cliffhanger, and they are waiting for their next book. They are waiting for the next part of the story. That is still a productive conclusion. Okay. Next is craft a narrative that lingers in the minds of your audience. Even if we have നമ്മൾ പണ്ട് കേട്ടുള്ള കഥകളാണെങ്കിലും it will be in our mind. For example, മുയലും ആമയും ഓട്ടമത്സരം നടത്തിയ കഥ എത്ര പ്രാവശ്യം കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടെന്ന് അറിയത്തില്ല. മേ ബി ഈവൻ വൺ ടൈം നമ്മൾ കേട്ടതാണെങ്കിൽ പോലും കുഞ്ഞുനാളെ നഴ്സറി ടീച്ചേഴ്സ് പഠിപ്പിച്ചായിരിക്കാം, ഫസ്റ്റ് സ്റ്റാൻഡേർഡിലോ സെക്കൻഡ് സ്റ്റാൻഡേർഡിലോ ടീച്ചേഴ്സ് പഠിപ്പിച്ചായിരിക്കാം. We will always remember that. We will keep that in our mind. Okay, we will never forget it. And even if we are hearing something similar, some stories that are similar to that, we will remember, oh yeah, this is similar to that story that I know that from the past. My teacher taught me this story. Okay, such a story is actually the best story ever, that keeps us, that always reminds us what we learned. Okay, so that is the tips for effective story crafting. We can rewind it. Okay, so from the start, the elements of a good story, the elements are character, plot, a setting, then the central conflict, and a satisfying resolution or a satisfying conclusion. We have the characters. We have to provide them with a setting, with a background. Maybe we can also provide the backstory of the characters as a side story, because some books have this character list in the front page, and it will provide a small information about these characters. It is actually seen in mostly seen in the fables or this Odyssey, Iliad, etc. If we are buying a book of that, we will have a character list in the front that will provide us with the information of the character and some backstories of the character. So we can always provide a setting, maybe in the Roman Empire, or maybe in the British Empire, the Nordic Empire, or maybe even in the imaginary world, like the Chronicles of Narnia. It is happening in an imaginary world. Okay, so just like that, provide a setting and make characters that are interesting, that will resonate with your readers. The readers will have to understand the plight of your characters, and they have to be interested in your characters. Maybe we can provide our heroes with some qualities. For example, we know Superman and Batman. Okay, they are actually rivals. Superman don't like Batman, and Batman do not like Superman also. But the something that they have in common is they both fight evil. Okay, so when the fans are, maybe some are supporting Superman and some will be supporting Batman, but there is a common thing, that is the fans or the audience are supporting these characters. Even then they are supporting the actors that are playing it. Okay, so they are supporting them because that characters are alive in their mind. Most important, the most famous example can be Iron Man from the Avengers, because even after he was dead, there was a lot of protest against Marvel, that they were filing complaint against Marvel to bring back Iron Man from his death. So they were almost forced to reshoot the climax of the Avengers second part. So it was really something that was really interesting to me, because the fans or the audience was so engaged with the plot, or they were so captivated with an actor, that they wanted them to reshoot a complete film. They wanted to change a conclusion. That's the important part. Like, when the readers get engaged with your characters, when the readers get engaged in your plot, they want to change the conclusion. If they want to change the conclusion, then that means you don't have a satisfying resolution. Sometimes we cannot satisfy everyone, but an interesting conclusion is also the victory of the author. Okay, so that is the importance of story writing, how we can write a good story, and the elements of a good story writing. Okay, so anybody has any questions or something doubts about this? I think no. Then we can end our live here. Until next time, thank you.